Welcome everyone to our monthly Sales G-Up. Today we have two very special guests joining us for August. We have Michael Simonyi from Davidson Recruitment and Anoop Enchel, who is our Content Director for Yossam and Head Sales Trainer. So today we have a very interesting topic. With all of the sales people and business owners and sales managers that we meet during our training, there's a very common thread in the fact that they get so frustrated when hiring a salesperson and it just doesn't work out no matter how much effort they put into it. So I thought I'd invite Michael on to join us today to discuss, are there any steps that you can put in place before you hire a salesperson or during the hiring process to mitigate the loss on the back end. So welcome, Michael.
Thanks very much, Emma. I appreciate the opportunity.
Pleasure, and welcome, Anoop.
Thanks, Emma. Good to be back online.
Excellent. It's been a little while, about 6 weeks since we've done this, so I'm excited to have everyone watching today. Michael, let's get straight into it because we've got a lot of content to cover today within the 30 minutes. So would you mind sharing with us and taking us through your sales process, basically, and what you do to help business owners?
Yeah, by all means. There are probably 5 fairly simple steps that if you observe them and over time you become more practiced at delivering them or executing them effectively, that'll mitigate a fair bit of the risk. One of them, or the first step, is really to map your sales process. So do you have a very thorough understanding in terms of what the sales process is in your business, in your industry? If you haven't got that mapped and documented clearly, you're really throwing darts at a board. So that's the first thing. The second step is to understand what the best people in your field do. Now that might be the highest performers in your own team, it might be high performers working for direct competitors, or it might be high performers working in allied sectors that have relevance to your business. But basically, talk to your own, if you've got a sizable sales team or if you've got somebody who's a high achiever, talk to that person, understand how it is that they achieve and what they do against that sales process that you've already mapped. So what areas are they strong in? Do they do things a little differently from your average performer or your poor performer? And it can also be worth looking at how your average or poor performers work as well, because that provides you a benchmark at the other end of the spectrum.
Is it important, Michael? I have a question for you. Is it important to always hire for a top performer? Or is it sometimes good to have the strategy of, having a couple of top performers, a couple of average performers, but no bad performers, obviously?
I don't know of a team, to use a sporting analogy, that wants to hire second-rate or recruit second-rate talent, and I think it should be the same with your sales team. I don't understand why anybody would set out deliberately to hire somebody who was only going to be average.
Good point.
Yeah, I think you should be recruiting somebody who's going to be a high performer in the specific role that you need them to fulfil, and that really leads on to the third part of the equation, if you like, in that it's very important that you understand what success looks like for the particular position you're recruiting. So you might have a team of 6 people out on the road, but each of those people has different geographic issues to contend with. The client mix within those territories can be different. The way that territory was previously managed can be different. So there are a whole bunch of variables that impact on the performance, or potentially impact on the performance of the person that you're putting into a particular role. So you need to very clearly understand what success looks like for the specific role you're recruiting somebody for, and you need to recruit to that. That leads you then to the rest of it actually becomes relatively simple. If you're interviewing potential candidates against those specific criteria, so you understand your sales process thoroughly, you understand what high performers do to achieve that high level of performance, and you understand the absolute specific requirements of the particular role that you're recruiting at a given time, you then interview against those criteria, then you're setting yourself up to be successful. And the final thing is, I'd suggest to people that you should delay your decisions. A lot of the time, and it's human nature, we make judgments about people throughout the interview process. In fact, we make judgments about people in the first 30 seconds that we meet them. So, and a lot of the time, people will fall in love with a candidate or not like a candidate in those first 30 seconds and spend the rest of their interview subconsciously justifying why they do or don't like that person, and they've made a decision by the end of the interview. Much better to gather the information that you require over the course of the interview and then be able to sit down objectively and dispassionately and assess the information you've gathered throughout the course of the interview against the key criteria that you've said are mandatory for somebody to be successful in the role.
Okay.
Follow those steps, and you're going to reduce a significant amount of the risk.
Can you just recap those 5 tips?
Sure. So map your sales process thoroughly. That's step 1. Understand what the best people do. What do high performers actually do to achieve high levels of performance?
Yes.
Understand what success looks like in this position. What are the key deliverables that this person needs to deliver for that specific role to be judged a success? Interview people specifically against those criteria, and then delay your decision making. Gather the information throughout your interview process, and then sit down later on and evaluate it against the criteria that you've identified.
And if there's any one spot that you find with all of your clients that they fall down the most,
Yep.
what do you feel it is?
It's not understanding what the specific criteria are for the particular role. We've all read job descriptions, right?
Yes.
Chuck them in the bin. They don't mean anything. They're nice, they're fluffy, they're generic. They don't say anything about what it is that the person going into this particular role has to deliver to be judged a success. So much better, the area that people always fall down is they don't specifically map out what it is that's required to be successful in the role.
Yep.
So then you're measuring candidates against blurry, meaningless criteria.
Against words that are fluffy.
Yeah.
Okay,
With
very
due respect
good.
to my HR colleagues.
Very good point. Very good point. Now, Anoop, you've hired a lot of salespeople over the last decade. What are your thoughts about what Michael shared?
I think Michael's made some really strong, valid points around that. And Michael, I just wanted to add, and this is really your area of expertise in the recruitment. I love the fact that you said hire the best people, set the benchmark against some of the average performers, and mapping the sales process. I think they're really, really valid points. Interestingly enough, I had a client the other day asking me about interviewing salespeople, and something that I suggested to them, and I'd love your thoughts on this. And you did mention it and said, sit on the interview after you've done it. But I've also in the past, and also mentioned this to this client, was that do at least a minimum of 2 to 3 interviews to start setting a baseline of what you're seeing. Would you agree with that as well?
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile getting a couple of people at least within your business to meet with the candidate. So there's you get different people's views, and I think that it's worth interviewing at least your preferred candidates or a couple of candidates a couple of times. So if you might start off with a shortlist to say 5 people, so get 2 or 3 people involved in the interview process at your end as the hiring company, and get that preferred candidate or perhaps the last couple of candidates back for a second meeting.
Yeah. Oh,
Very
fantastic.
good.
That's great.
And Michael, from your experience, it's great to see the people a couple of times before you actually hire them. Would you do that for a couple of people? Is it worthwhile investing the time?
Typically, yes. It depends on the caliber of the shortlist that you interview, but yes, it would be. I'd suggest that you'd want to you'd hope to have, through your process, uncovered a couple of people who you think are potentially the right people for your business. And I think that having a couple of people to benchmark against right up to the close is good practice.
Yes. And what if there's just no one? What do you do for your clients if there's just no one that you feel in your gut is going to last the distance?
Don't put the wrong person in a job, because the cost to get them out and the damage they do to your business in the meantime is going to outweigh the cost that you'd have from having a vacant chair 99 times out of 100. It leads on to a separate issue, I guess, in terms of how you go about sourcing candidates. If all you're doing is putting an ad up on Seek and hoping that the right person is going to respond, well, then your chances of you're tapping into a limited talent pool in the first place. But But that's the sourcing of candidates aside. I'd say that the cost to your business of hiring the wrong person and the damage they can do while they're there far outweighs having nobody in the chair.
Yep. Yep. And would you mind sharing with us a little bit more about, some small business owners may not have used a recruitment firm before. So would you mind sharing with us while you're, talking about hiring salespeople, exactly what you do and what you can do for business owners?
Well, look, a good recruiter, and I guess I'm talking my own book here, but a good recruiter should have expertise in your space and should be able to source candidates that aren't necessarily actively out there on job boards such as Seek. So, typically my process will include, yes, I might advertise the role online, but I'll be searching for candidates through social media, things like LinkedIn, to find people who might be working for allied businesses that I might approach direct. When I take a brief from a client, I want to understand who their direct competitors are and look at people that might be working with those businesses that you might approach direct. I'd be looking at speaking to companies that your business might do business with, who would be seeing salespeople from other businesses as well. So, for example, if you're a lighting manufacturer selling product into electrical contractors, then I'd go and talk to electrical contractors about who they rate out there as being good people, good performers in the industry, and then go and approach them direct. So advertising is part of what you do, but it shouldn't be the only plank in your strategy.
Absolutely. I like that, the only plank in your strategy. A little gem for today. So now that we've got the salesperson, what do we do with them, Anoop?
It's a very valid question. I mean, I've used recruitment agencies before, and just to sort of give Michael a little bit of plug around recruitment agencies is if you find a good one, and I know I think my previous life we've used Davidson before. What ends up happening is you end up getting rid of all the rubbish. These guys sort of condense all the rubbish out and give you more of the sort of the cream of the crop, which is means as a business owner, if you value yourself in dollars per hour, you start seeing that what you pay them is you're saving yourself a whole heap of time and agony by just actually talking to the right people. So I guess in Michael's conversation where he says getting rid of in the sports context, if you could have a whole heap of Ronaldos and Beckhams being interviewed, be much better than having a second-rate team being interviewed for. So there's a little bit of a plug for you, Michael, because I do believe in what you guys do is is a worthwhile cause. So definitely from this process. So good question, Emma. What do we do once we get them? I would say probably 80 to 90% of failures in the sales industry and the sales process actually happens here. We either have interviewed badly, okay, so it starts off straight away. We've interviewed badly and we get desperate, like what Michael said. We get desperate, so we get somebody in to say we've just got to get the person in, okay? So I'm a firm believer that you should hire attitude over aptitude, that you can really work with them. And if you get the right person in, then the other part kicks in. To really make them successful, this is the top 5 things that I look at.
Anoop, just to interrupt you for a second, when you say higher attitude over aptitude, this is a question for Michael. How exactly can what do you do to assess the attitude over aptitude? Is it a gut feeling? Is there stuff that you do? Would you mind sharing that with us?
It tends not to be gut feeling, because if we all had great gut instincts, we'd all have hired teams of superstars and never make mistakes. So don't go with your gut. I mean, as much as that might be counterintuitive, try and use some method of verifying that your gut instinct is correct before you go hiring people. But I think you really need to drill into the experiences people have had during the interview process and understand how they've gone about doing things, not just the outcomes that they've achieved, and that gives you a much better understanding in terms of how a person operates and what sort of things tend to motivate them. So you might ask a salesperson to describe a particular success and really drill into what they did to close a particular deal. How did they uncover the lead? What hurdles did they face? How did they overcome those hurdles? Those sorts of things. If you understand the very specific detail about what people have had to do to achieve success, you start to get a good understanding in terms of their motivations.
Okay, Very good. Thank you for sharing that, Michael. Now, Anoop, I know you've got a hot 5 here to share, so I'm just going to let you go for it. If anyone does have any questions, there is a little text box underneath the video that you're viewing, so feel free to type in a question, and we'll answer them after Anoop finishes his top 5.
Okay, cool. So top 5, once you've got the right person on board, or you feel you've got the right person on board, is number 1 and foremost, of course I'm going to say this is training. So many organizations lack in training, lack in a proper systematic training, not like a gut feel training. It's not like, oh, here we go, do this. Oh, yeah, you may want to do this. No, have a systematic approach to your training. All right, make sure that it's set out in a manual process. Nowadays, even using, content onto YouTube and putting your own sort of content onto YouTube and having a private access for your team member to get on board. So training is very, very critical. You're going to fail if you don't train properly. Now that sounds, it sounds very simple. Like my top 5 are very simple. And a lot of people say, well, of course you need to train. Yeah, but it's the right training as well. Okay, so, and here's just a shameless plug on what we do at We Awesome, is make sure they go through that right training as well in accordance with the way you want your team to be trained. Secondly, a lot of people hate me for saying this, especially salespeople, but I'm just going to tell them to suck it up right now, because this is how best performers are made. Okay, role playing. The role playing is critical to any organization, and if you don't like doing it as a boss, I tell you to start really re-looking and refocusing around that. Okay, it's the same thing as the sporting analogy. You've got to get it wrong on the field before you go out on game day. So why don't we role play enough? Okay, oh, because we're scared. Oh, the salespeople don't like it. Well, you know what? It's a big deal. Get out there and do it. You've got to role play, because they've got to find out the verbiage has to be correct before they get out on the road. And yes, they won't like it. They'll retaliate and they go, it's not normal, it's not right. Of course it's not. It's meant to be superficial. But hey, get it wrong in a training environment to get it right when you're out there in front of the customer. Because the customer's really only going to give you, and especially in today's climate, one opportunity, if not, if that even. 3, product knowledge. Now, the funny thing about product knowledge is I talk about it from a toolbox perspective. Yes, you've got to understand your product, and I will say this time and time again. The best salespeople will know their product inside and out. Okay, they will know everything about their product, but what you've got to understand is you're not going to talk to the client or the prospect 100% of the time about your product. You may only need 5% of the product knowledge, but it's that right 5% at that critical time that'll get you that sale. Okay, so I'll give you a quick example, and all the listeners today, what I really want you to do is get onto Google and YouTube, get onto Google and search for ZMOT, Z-M-O-T. It's a study that came out by Google about the 0 moment of truth, about what the consumer is doing now and the way they purchase. Okay, they are coming into a retailer, a car dealer, whoever they're dealing with, and they know more about the product than sometimes the salespeople. God knows I do. When I go out and probably buy a TV or a phone, I've done a lot of research. So I would say that all of a sudden my value for the salesperson is minimal now, because I know more about them. You know what? If you want to be a top performer and earn the big dollars and really make a difference, you've got to know those products back to front. And when the customer comes in and you want to go, hey, great, I'm glad you know about this product, but did you also know about this? Or were you using it for this, or did you know about that? And all of a sudden now you're adding value, and then the customer's not looking at price. They're going, holy crap, this guy's actually really good. I want to use him, and I'm going to refer him to other people.
So Anoop,
yes.
Does that mean that the needs analysis that salespeople do is even more important to frame around the product knowledge if the consumer knows more about it than ever before?
100%. Your needs analysis is the critical part where you're going to then find out that 5% of the product knowledge which they don't know about, and to be able to present around that and blow their mind. Okay? Because what it is, it's like peeling a layer back of onions, and as you keep peeling, you're going to get to the core of what the real issue is. And a lot of salespeople don't do this. And I'll actually go out to say 90% of salespeople do not even know how to effectively ask questions. They don't know how to do it. And sorry, going on a side note, I had dinner on Friday night in Sydney with my old pharmaceutical company, which has been bought out by a bigger one, and they're now trying to systemize the process so much that a lot of the salespeople have to ask minimal questions. And I went, why are you doing this? He goes, because we actually cannot find salespeople who can effectively ask great questions. It was insane. So I think if you guys want to earn money out there and you want to be in sales, you want to earn money, even if you're not and you want to be an effective communicator, God knows, you know what? Learn how to ask questions and shut up and listen. Okay, sorry, I get off on a rant. I get really excited about this. Number 4, Michael's covered this up. You need a sales process. The failure in salespeople is not having a sales process. They don't know how to systematically guide the consumer or the prospect through to actually wanting to buy the product. Okay, they get to the end, and we're talking with guys like in the industries in pharmaceuticals are paid 6 figures plus, do not know how to close the sale because they don't know how to follow a process. They literally get to the end and go, okay, so doctor, food for thought, hey? And I've heard that being said, food for thought. Why would you say food for thought? Why not say, will you prescribe the drug? Because they lack in the process and lack around the training in that, okay? So it's very, very interesting that the whole role play has failed them because either they haven't done it effectively or haven't done it all. So a process is key. We need it. Human needs, one of our human needs is certainty because we look for control and process. And in order to get control, you need to have a process. Okay, and the final thing is when you're training your team and you've got them on board, follow through. Don't just expect that you've done a little bit of training with them and that you've got some of the stuff going and they're out there doing it. Make sure you follow through. Ride on the road with them. Get out on the road and see how they're performing. Salespeople, great ones, love it because they're getting good critical feedback. The bad ones don't. They go, I don't need you to come out. You know, everything's fine. And they make all these cock and bull excuses. Well, the reality is you need to go out on the road with them because right then you're going to find out the 2 millimeters where they could be winning or losing a sale. So it's for healthy criticism and it's also for criticism and critiquing them to make them better. So, Emma, there's my top 5 and what you take them through the process.
I think that was actually 6, Anoop. You snuck a sneaky one in. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, Michael, you haven't actually met Anoop before other than today. So that's exciting. So that's all new stuff from Anoop for you. Do you have any thoughts or comments on how you could use that to help retain salespeople?
Yeah, I think that last point in particular, Anoop, in terms of getting out on the road with people, that's critical. It's tough out there. We all know it's a difficult economic climate. The fact that your sales manager is prepared to invest the time and effort to get out there with you, not necessarily to help you to do deals, but to help you improve your performance, to provide that critical feedback and constructive criticism, I think that's particularly important. And I'd echo your thoughts about the onboarding process. The number of times I still hear of people turning up for new roles, and it's like somebody's sprung a surprise on the company. You know, they're not ready for them in terms of, you know, the training's a bit haphazard and it's all sort of cobbled together at the last moment. It's certainly not systematic and well thought through. In terms of retaining people, that has a big impact. I mean, you remember your first day at work, and if it's a shambles where you're being sort of pushed from pillar to post because nobody is ready for you or different people are away and that sort of thing, that tends to stick with people, and particularly in those early days when people are finding their feet. If you're not making that a positive experience for them, you're really risking them just not engaging right from the start.
Which is something that I'm sure that none of our watchers are wanting to do, is waste their recruitment dollars and the time that gets invested into salespeople, because it's not just the dollars, it's the time as well, isn't it, Michael?
Absolutely. You don't want to go through that process twice, trust me.
Very good. Now, Anoop, I'm going to ask you just a question from the audience. Can you just recap and expand a little bit on Zmont?
Zmont was a study that was put out by Google. It's a white paper by Google, and what the whole idea was to find out at what stage are the people buying. So Zmont stands for Zero Moment of Truth. So before the internet, what we had was the first moment of truth came when you actually crossed the threshold and walked into a store or met with a salesperson, and that was the sort of first time you really connected with a brand or got any understanding. So, you know, it was limited amount of information you may have had on it, but it was the opportunity for the salesperson to present and hopefully ask questions to be able to present effectively. So this is where what we've done is at the first moment of truth, we've been able to present over asked questions. Now what's happened with the whole study around what white paper Google put out was they're finding that a lot of people are actually doing more research before making the call. They want to know what your website looks like. They want to have a connection with that brand first off. They want to know that there's enough information, and then they know enough about it to talk to you. So the problem is that we're still living in an 80s, 90s style of selling of saying, I've just got to present a product. Well, what we're not doing is giving the respect to the client, and what Zero Moment of Truth is telling us is that they already know probably 50, 60, 70% about the product. So give them that respect, and they'll probably actually end up favoring your product rather than somebody just talking out there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for answering that. Now, Anoop, I'm going to get you to do our August recap because we've only got a couple of minutes left till everyone needs to get back to work. So, Anoop, what is it that's going to make a difference for the salespeople watching this month?
Look, I'm a big... okay, so really quickly, the election's been announced, so what we're probably going to go see over the next few weeks is a lot of businesses are going to start putting things on hold, or they're going to wait for the election and blah, 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 which generally happens. Don't get frustrated with this. This is a great opportunity for you to connect with your client and be able to set them up now or for, past September the 7th. Show confidence in your product, but more importantly, give confidence to the customer. Okay? Don't just fall in love with your product. Fall in love with the customer to understand that they may not be aware of what they're in for when purchasing your product. So be patient, be kind, and be very loving around it, and make sure you're engaging with them to make sure that they understand that they feel confident with what you're offering. They're my quick tips. So, don't be frustrated with what's going to happen this month. It may be a bit of a challenge. Look, I'm preempting that. It may not be. But just be understanding that when elections come around, a lot of people just do a lot of stupid things like nothing because I don't know why. Because either way, we've still got to breathe, eat, and move on, right? But don't be frustrated. It's a great opportunity. I think August is a fantastic month. We've now had July over with the financial year now. New one kicked in. So there are budgets to spend, so go out and grab them.
So is there a tip that you could share with, there is a new financial year budget. Is there a strategy that you could share around, getting access to that and helping the client move towards your product?
Well, ask them and say, look, have you been given a budget for this year for these projects? Ask the question. We're too afraid to ask the question, okay? So I would ask straight up, look, I'm approaching you because last year you said that you had budget constraints, or we do understand the budgets have now been released. Look, can we have a chat about where you're looking at investing and if there's any way we can help you? Ask straight up. You'll be amazed at the answers you'll get.
Love it. Thanks, Anoop. Now, Anoop, we do have a public Yossam masterclass coming up, so would you mind sharing a few of the details and the insights into what will be covered in that? And we do have a special offer just for 2 viewers to take advantage of. So what we do at Yossam is we offer an 8-week online sales course where you actually have the pleasure of me. Sorry, I was a bit arrogant, but I am online with you. So we've, having written a lot of the content around this, and it's similar to what I've just presented today. We go over the 8-week process. We not only work with a sales process, but more importantly, we work with the psychology of selling as well. They're the two things that go hand in hand. You need to have a mapping process, but you also need to have the psychology of selling as well. So we do get into your headspace in a good way to really get you to understand why people buy and why they don't. So we do that over an 8-week period. We normally charge $14.99 for 2 viewers today. If you're interested in kicking off, we start this course on August 19th. Would love to have you on board, and we will do it for a discounted price of $9.95. It's 2 hours a week. You log into this Google Hangouts platform. It's a totally live and interactive session. It's not recorded. Please understand it's not pre-recorded. So it's a bit of fun. Look, I really enjoy taking them, and I'd love to see you there. So August 19th we kick out 8 modules. We learn everything from the sales process, the psychology of selling, and how to understand other people to be able to frame your product and position it in the right way for them as well. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Anoop. It's really for business owners and their sales teams who they don't know where they are in their sales process, as we were talking a lot today about sales process, both before hiring, after hiring, and then continuing on. Knowing your sales process is really important. So if you don't have one, please go through the links from the email that you'll receive today, check out the opportunity, and we'd love to have 2 of you take advantage of that offer. Now, thank you so much, Michael, for joining us today and offering all your wisdom around hiring salespeople. I know you're so passionate. You're so passionate about what you do, which is why I invited you on. So is there something that you wanted to tell the audience just before we leave off?
Look, I get on a soapbox about it, but if you do nothing else, just sit down and understand very clearly what it is you need your person to achieve in the role that you're recruiting. If you don't do anything else, that's the basic building block. If you at least start from that point, you're going to give yourself a better chance of being successful.
Excellent. And Anoop, final words to get everyone G'd up for the month of August?
Look, you know what, fine, I'm going to make it really simple, a little bit spiritual. Learn how to smile and don't make things mean worse than they are. If things screw up or they don't go the way you want them, don't beat yourself up about it. Smile and learn to laugh, and you'll tend to enjoy the whole process in your life a lot more.